Hey everybody, it's the Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com here in San Diego, California. For all things Vespa, check us out on the web, ScooterWest.com. Today I'm going to talk about adjusting the shocks on a modern Vespa. Pretty much most all modern Vespas 125cc and over have an adjustable preload on the rear shock. More advanced shock absorbers, they have adjustable compression and rebound, which actually adjusts the characteristics of how the dampening of the suspension works. Unfortunately, Vespas are a little simpler. They just give you a basic preload adjustment. And I'll also go in depth of what that does and how it's going to help you. So the rear suspension on modern Vespas, if you're on the small frame Vespas, which are typically the 150 or 125 Vespas, the 50 even, but they don't have adjustable shock. They have a single shock on the rear that's got a 4-position preload adjustment. The preload pretty much can change about a ½ inch or a little bit more of a ½ inch of preload on the suspension. What the preload does is it's how much pressure you're putting on the spring. You get two things out of it. Moving the preload to a higher or a stiffer position where there's more preload makes the suspension a little firmer. It's also able to handle, a higher load, such as if you have a passenger on the scooter or heavy luggage on the scooter. A lower preload makes for a softer ride, also just slightly lowers the ride height. So if you're looking to gain just ever so slight amount of ground clearance, say you're under 5'4", and just even the small adjustments will drop the scooter about a 1/4 to a ½ inch in the rear. And that's with both the Vespa GTSs. They have a twin shock design, so you need to adjust 2 shocks. Both shocks have a 4-position adjuster, and then the Primaveras and Sprints, ET4s, LX, etc., LXV, have a single shock that you'll adjust it. Fortunately, with the toolkit that's included with the Vespa, it comes with a special tool to adjust the preload. So located in the front glove box of a Vespa GTS, whether it's an old GT200 or the latest and greatest GTS 300 HPE, is a plastic bag with some basic tools. So the tool you're going to look for is this funny looking tool with a little hook on it. So the adjusters only turn in one direction. You want to start from the left side of the scooter and turn the tool towards the right side. And you only want to go up in the adjustment, or you could go back down. But if you want to go up, you can only ramp it up each one of these pegs. So in the stock setting, they have the lowest preload. If you want to go up, 1 or 2, you got to do it on both sides. If your shocks are old, I would recommend a silicone lubricant like this, and just give the whole ring a little spray. Make sure you don't get it on the tire like I did there. But to use the tool, you get it in one of these notches, have it on the back of the scooter, and just carefully turn the tool. So 1 notch. And you just got to do it slowly. So there's 1 notch up. And then if you go to the 2nd notch, and it may be even easier if you remove the skirts from the scooter. That may make it a little easier. So we cranked up the preload on this scooter. Is what the owner's manual recommends is, if you're a light rider, have it on the lowest setting. So where this adjuster is furthest down, pretty much, it's in this notch right here. This notch that's furthest up, actually. If you're a little heavier, I don't know, my guess is over 150 pounds, you can go 1 notch up. If you're riding 2 up, you use the 2 higher preload settings. And that's the recommendation. I can tell you, you don't notice much difference between, adjusting it 1 notch and 2 notches. But going from the lowest setting to the firmest setting, I can just ever so slightly notice a little firmer rear suspension on it. So on the GTS, again, you got to duplicate the same amount of adjustment on your left shock as well. The right shock's easy because there's a lot more room to do this, obviously you want to do this with a cold muffler. You could remove these side skirts. I've covered videos on how to do that. Makes it a little easier. But the left shock is tucked very tight up against the air box. And oftentimes I'll just loosen the air box to make that adjustment. So with the air box in the way, there's just not much room to really make the adjustment. But you can kind of go right towards the tire. There we go. We were just able to get it one click. And we'll do the same on this one, another click. There you go. Don't really intend the tool to pop out. If you want to do the job a little easier, you could even loosen up the air box, but it is possible with the factory tool to adjust this shock. And to go down, just pretty much put the tool on the opposite direction. And it's easier usually to go down than to go up because you're not fighting against the spring quite as much. So you just kind of wait till it drops in one notch, and there we go. So we're one up from the lowest setting right now, and we'll do the same on the right shock. So on the Primavera Sprint or a Vespa LX CT4, the single shock is actually easier to get access to, and pretty much the same thing. And you can just keep on going. So there's one up from the lowest, two up from the lowest, and the firmest setting. And you can tell there's more resistance on it. And if you do want to go back to the very lowest setting, it is possible to go past and drop it back down. But I always find it's easier just to go in the reverse direction and just crank it lower. And now to the lowest setting. So on the Sprint Primavera or older Vespa LX, typically the tool kit roll is located underneath the seat in this tie wrap. Sometimes this tie wrap may be missing, or it may be in a document folder, possibly in the glove box. But in this tool roll, just like the GTS, you'll find a similar shock adjustment tool. So the shock adjustment is more of a personal preference. And I suggest you try the different settings, ride it for a day on the lowest, and then crank it all the way up to the firmest and ride around. And then maybe figure out which one of the 4 settings is best for you and the majority of your riding. Or maybe you're planning on doing a long distance tour with luggage. Then I would just suggest cranking it up to the higher settings. So the scooter suspension works a little bit better. It's less likely to bottom out, and the sag of the shocks is more in the correct range for good handling characteristics of the Vespa. Thanks, Jeff, for the suggestion of coming up with a little video on doing something as simple as adjusting your shocks. Sometimes I forget, everybody wants to see sometimes the most complicated jobs, but there's also simple jobs that everybody that owns a modern Vespa should know about. Until next time, this is Robot here from Scooter West and Vespa Motorsport here in San Diego, California. Thanks again for watching. See you on the next one.